When someone questions your intelligence, your first instinct might be to fire back, defend yourself, or prove them wrong. But pausing gives you power. A deep breath is not silence, it's wisdom. In that pause, you remind yourself, their words don't define my worth. Pausing keeps you from reacting emotionally and positions you to respond with clarity, not chaos. It tells the other person, I am not shaken by your attempt to diminish me. When someone insults your intelligence, it often lands like a sting. You feel your body tighten, your face heat up, and your heart pound. That's the nervous system doing its job, preparing you for fight or flight. And in that split second, the temptation is strong. You want to prove them wrong, defend yourself, or deliver a cutting comeback that makes them regret ever underestimating you. But here's the truth. The first few seconds after an insult are where you either give away your power or keep it. And the difference lies in one small act, the pause. A pause is not weakness. A pause is a declaration. I will not let your words control my reaction. It's not silence born of fear. It's silence born of strength. Because when you pause, you buy yourself something most people never use. Space. Space to breathe, space to think, space to choose. That breath you take is not just oxygen, it's clarity. It reminds you that an insult says more about the person throwing it than the one receiving it. A pause helps you realize, I am not obligated to dance to the rhythm of their disrespect. And here's what's even more powerful. A pause unsettles the person who insulted you. They expect you to snap back, to be defensive, to argue. When you don't, they lose control of the moment. Suddenly, it is you, not them, who holds the authority in the conversation. Think about it this way. A pause is like holding a mirror up to their words. Instead of reacting, you reflect their energy back at them. And often in that moment of silence, they hear the weight of their own insult more loudly than if you had shouted back. So the next time someone questions your intelligence, try this. Stop, breathe. Even a few seconds is enough. Remind yourself, their words do not rewrite my worth. Then when you respond, if you choose to, you'll respond from a place of calm, clarity, and dignity rather than anger. Because in life, it's not always the loudest voice that wins. It's the voice that stays grounded when everything else tries to pull it off center. When someone insults your intelligence, what they're really trying to do is drag you into a battle on their terms. They want you to defend yourself, to prove you're worthy, to fight for credibility. And here's the thing, the moment you start defending, you've already given them the power to define the playing field. But confidence is not about proving yourself. It's about redirecting the energy of the conversation. Instead of saying that I'm not stupid, here's why, you calmly shift the focus away from the insult and back onto the substance of the discussion. For example, if someone says, you clearly don't get it, you can respond, that's one way to look at it. Let me share another perspective. If someone mocks, you don't seem to understand, you can say, I see it differently. Here's why. This isn't about ignoring what they said. It's about refusing to let their insults set the agenda. You're essentially saying, I hear you, but your attempt to minimize me is not where this conversation is going. Redirection is powerful because it communicates two truths at the same time. I'm not rattled by your attempt to cut me down. I have something of value to add, and I'm going to stand by it. When you redirect with confidence, you stop playing defense. You step into leadership. You're no longer reacting, you're guiding. And the person who guides the conversation, even subtly, holds the power in the room. Think about it. Intelligent people don't need to announce their intelligence. They demonstrate it by staying composed, focused, and solutions-oriented. Redirecting with confidence is how you rise above the noise. Because here's the bigger truth. When someone questions your intelligence, it's rarely about you, it's about them. Their insecurity, their frustration, their need to dominate. When you redirect, you refuse to carry their insecurity on your shoulders. You stay Rounded in your own sense of worth, and lead the conversation forward with clarity. And that, quietly, gracefully, is one of the cleverest responses of all. There's a reason why humor is one of the most powerful tools in human connection. It can diffuse tension, soften conflict, and remind everyone in the room that we're all human. When someone insults your intelligence, the air gets thick with judgment and pride, but humor has this almost magical ability to break that tension, to lighten the heaviness, and to return control back into your hands. Now, let's be clear, using humor doesn't mean mocking them back, and it doesn't mean making yourself the butt of every joke. It means using wit, not weapons, to show that their words don't have the power to wound you. Imagine someone says, "Wow, you really didn't know that?" Instead of bristling or snapping, you could smile and reply, "Guess I left some space in my brain for surprises." Or if someone sneers, "You're slower than I thought," you might answer, "I like to think of it as double-checking the universe." These aren't self-insults. They're playful reframes. They send the message, "I'm comfortable enough in my own skin that your attempt to embarrass me doesn't work." The brilliance of humor lies in what it signals to the room. It tells the person who insulted you, and anyone watching, that you are unshaken, that you won't let someone else's attempt at control rattle your sense of self. You don't have to claw your way back to dignity because you never lost it. And here's another gift humor gives you. It shifts the focus from a clash of egos to a moment of shared humanity. People lean toward those who can laugh, who don't take themselves too seriously, and who refuse to let negativity anchor the conversation. Humor doesn't just disarm the insult, it elevates you above it. The key is to use humor without hostility, because the goal isn't to humiliate the other person, even if they tried to humiliate you. That only traps you in the same cycle of bitterness. Humor with hostility is a weapon. Humor with warmth is wisdom. And maybe the most powerful part, when you laugh lightly, confidently, you remind yourself of your own resilience. You remind yourself that no one else gets to define how much space their insult takes up in your life. That right there is cleverness, turning a potential wound into a moment of levity and choosing to rise higher instead of digging deeper. When someone insults your intelligence, it's easy to feel cornered. You might feel the urge to defend yourself, to prove you're capable, or to push back with equal force. But there's another way, one that's subtle, powerful, and deeply human. Instead of defending or attacking, you ask a question. A simple, disarming question shifts the dynamic in an instant. When someone says, "Wow, you're not as smart as I thought," instead of snapping back, you calmly respond, "What makes you say that?" Or if someone comments, "I can't believe you don't know that," you might reply, "Benny, can you explain what you mean?" Why is this so powerful? Because insults thrive in the dark. They're thrown like stones, quickly, carelessly, hoping to land a bruise. But when you ask a question, you shine a light on the stone thrower. You put the responsibility back on them to justify their words. And often, when someone has to explain their insult out loud, it collapses under its own weight. Questions also force a shift from emotion to reflection. Instead of you being the one scrambling to prove your worth, they're now the one who has to think. You've moved the spotlight from your supposed flaw to their choice of words. That's not weakness, that's strategy. But asking a disarming question isn't about playing games. It's about holding people accountable with calm curiosity. It communicates, "I'm not here to attack you, but I'm also not going to let your words go unchecked." It's a balance of dignity and courage. And here's the deeper beauty of this approach. Sometimes people insult without even realizing the harm they're causing. A question like, "What makes you say that?" can create a moment of self-awareness. Maybe they rethink their tone, maybe they soften, maybe they even apologize. Of course, not everyone will. Some people double down, but even then you've already won. Because instead of abso, Barbing their insult, you've made them own it. And in doing so, you've reminded yourself and anyone watching that you have the power to turn an attack into accountability. The cleverness here isn't about trapping them, it's about freeing yourself. A disarming question is a reminder that you don't have to carry their judgment. You can hand it back calmly and say, "This doesn't belong to me." That's not just clever, that's courageous. One of the most powerful things you can do when someone insults your intelligence is to reframe it. Instead of accepting their definition of you, you take their words and turn them into a declaration of your own strength. This is not denial, this is ownership. It's choosing to rewrite the story in a way that empowers you instead of diminishes you. Let's say someone says, "You're slow to understand." Instead of bristling or shrinking, you might respond, "I like to take my time and think things through carefully." What you've just done is transform their criticism into a compliment. You've told them and reminded yourself that patience and thoughtfulness are not flaws, they're virtues. Or if someone mocks you with, "You ask too many questions," you can calmly reply, "That's because I believe curiosity makes us better learners." Suddenly, what they tried to frame as ignorance becomes evidence of your wisdom. This ability to reframe takes courage because it requires you to stand in the truth of who you are, even when someone else is trying to shrink you. It's refusing to let their insult become your identity. Here's the deeper truth. People often attack qualities in others that they themselves undervalue or don't understand. They may call you too detailed because they lack patience. They may call you overthinking because they don't know how to reflect. They may call you naive because they lost their own ability to trust. When you reframe, you don't just defend yourself, you expose the possibility that their insult was never about you in the first place. And reframing does more than protect your self-esteem. It sets an example for others. When people see you take something negative and turn it into a sign of strength, they learn that insults don't have to be prisons. They can be opportunities to reveal character. The cleverness in this response lies not in the artness of your tongue, but in the resilience of your perspective. You're saying, "I decide who I am. I decide what this means. Your words cannot shrink me because I am the author of my own narrative." When you reframe, you rise above the insult without ever needing to step on anyone else. That's not just clever, that's transformational power. There's something profoundly disarming about a person who isn't afraid to admit they don't know everything. When someone insults your intelligence, their goal is often to make you feel ashamed. Ashamed of what you don't know, ashamed of what you missed, ashamed of not being enough. But shame only has power when we try to hide. The clever response here isn't to fight for perfection. It's to embrace your humanity with confidence. A simple, calm statement like, "I may not know everything, but I'm always willing to learn," strips the insult of its sting. Because what more can someone say when you've already owned your imperfection? This response works because it does two radical things at once. It acknowledges the truth. None of us are all-knowing. It transforms what they called a weakness into a strength, a willingness to learn, to grow, to keep evolving. That's not a deficit, that's resilience. When you own your humanity without shame, you're reminding both yourself and the other person that intelligence isn't about having every answer at your fingertips. It's about curiosity, adaptability, and the courage to admit you don't know something today, but can learn it tomorrow. Think about the people you respect the most. Are they the ones who pretend to have all the answers? Or are they the ones who can say, "I don't know, but I'll find out," without shrinking in embarrassment? True strength is found in honesty, not in pretense. And here's the beauty of it. When you model this kind of humility, it often softens the room. It gives others permission to be human too, because the truth is we're all still figuring things out. Nobody has a monopoly on intelligence. So the next time someone tries to make you feel small by pointing out what you don't know, remember, imperfection is not something to hide, it's something to honor. Owning your humanity without shame, says Yukea. In not weaponize my learning process against me. My openness is my strength. And that in itself is a response far more clever and far more courageous than any insult could ever be. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. When someone insults your intelligence, they're often fishing for a reaction. They want to see you flinch, to see you defend, to see you prove. And when you don't give them that satisfaction, when you meet their words with calm, steady silence, you take away the very power they were reaching for. Silence can feel uncomfortable, especially in a world that teaches us to fight for our dignity with words. But silence is not weakness. It is strength under control. It's the choice to say, I do not owe you my energy, and I will not waste my breath on disrespect. Think about what silence communicates in a moment of insult. It says, I've heard you, but I don't value your words enough to dignify them with a response. Your opinion doesn't define me, so I won't defend myself against it. I am not here to play the game you want me to play. And here's the thing. Silence often speaks louder than the sharpest comeback. It unsettles the person who insulted you because it denies them the drama they were hoping for. They're left sitting in the echo of their own words, forced to confront the emptiness of what they just said. Silence also protects you. It prevents you from saying something you might regret in the heat of the moment. It keeps your dignity intact and leaves you in control of yourself rather than letting anger or hurt hijack your voice. But perhaps the deepest power of silence is this. It reminds you that not every battle deserves your presence. Not every insult is worthy of a fight. Sometimes the highest form of intelligence is knowing when to walk away from noise and stay rooted in your own peace. So the next time someone throws an insult at your intelligence, remember this: silence is not surrender. Silence is strategy. It's self-respect in its purest form. And sometimes silence doesn't just speak, it roars. Here's something most people forget. The conversation doesn't end when the words stop. The heaviest part often comes afterward when you replay the insult in your mind. You hear it on loop. Yeah, you're not smart enough. You should have said this. Like, you should have handled it better. That inner replay can do more damage than the insult itself if you're not careful. This is why the final and perhaps most important response is not about them. It's about you. It's about affirming your worth to yourself once the moment has passed. Because no matter how clever your response in the moment, if you walk away still carrying their words like a wound, you've let the insult live longer than it should. Affirmation doesn't mean pretending you weren't hurt. It means choosing what story you will believe about yourself. Maybe it sounds like, their words do not define my intelligence. I am always learning, and that makes me strong. My worth is not up for debate. It's about reclaiming the narrative. Instead of letting their insult echo as truth, you drown it out with your own voice of compassion and truth. And here's the deeper gift. This practice of self-affirmation builds resilience. Each time you remind yourself of your worth, you train your mind to reject shame faster. You build a kind of inner armor, not the heavy kind that walls you off, but the light, strong kind that allows you to walk through life without being pierced by every careless word. Affirming yourself afterward is not indulgence, it's maintenance. It's how you protect the most important relationship you'll ever have, the one with yourself. Because at the end of the day, you spend far more time with your own thoughts